Hi, I'm Nick Disabato. I'm a designer and writer from Avondale. Thank you so much to Really Good Emails for having me speak at UNSPAM today. I'm so grateful and excited to be doing this. Thank you to you for listening. I really appreciate it. First, a little bit about Draft. We're nominally an interaction design consultancy. This is an image of us. Clients hire us to understand their customers, run A/B tests, and hopefully make the numbers go up in a way that is not gross. And it all starts with the word that everybody loves and is exactly why you're all here, which is research. People make a big deal of this word and they kind of don't know what to do about it. And for us, it's really simple. Research is just a process of gathering evidence. That's it. We find some problems in the process of gathering that evidence, and then we ask ourselves how to go about solving those problems. That's it. That's all we do. End of talk. We're good. That's it. All right. So this talk actually is broken into 4 parts. The first is we're going to talk about process a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about design, and then we're going to talk about email, and then I'm going to tell you how to run your life, and that's it. So first up, process. Like research, it is both boring and extremely essential. Business lives or dies on process, and in our work, nothing really matters more than the way in which things are done and the way in which things are decided. And why does this matter, and why am I saying it? I think that a lot of people hire us maybe to make the numbers go up, maybe to understand their customers better, but really what we end up doing at the very beginning especially is creating durable, repeatable processes that reliably generate profit. And in practice, this means 3 things. Super easy. First, try to understand what might be leaking revenue. That can take the form of quantitative research, like I'm looking at your analytics or heat maps, or behavior recordings, determine what's underperforming there. It can also take the form of qualitative research, where I'm asking customers what motivates them, or I'm running surveys, and it helps me with pitch and so on and so forth, understanding what their overall relationship with the brand is, all those things. And in our experience, among many outcomes, you can change your headlines, you can handle objections on product detail pages, you can change your brand, but really qualitative research feeds also into email strategy. So that means, for us, if you want to improve email, you have to get your customers on the phone. Now we'll talk more about this in a minute and see how that actually works. Second step is look at the information that you've gathered and come up with some ideas for how to change things. That can take the form of one-off changes, like you found a bug or a usability issue and you want to go and fix it. It can also take the form of an experiment, such as if you're changing your branding or changing your pitch or your headline, something like that, and you don't really know how to handle that, then, that can give you a little bit more insight. Every time you're not certain that there will be an improvement to the customer's experience, you run an experiment. That's pretty much it. And those are the 2 genres of changes that you're actually going to be making. Since you've generated a lot of ideas from your research, usually you should go through and prioritize them based on expected impact, overall effort, and alignment with business strategy. And this blog post here has a little bit of insight into what it is we do for our prioritization process. I feel like every other consultancy similar to ours has a different sort of process, and ours works, but it's just one. And then the final step is you roll out the fixes, build experiments one by one based on the prioritization that you ended up putting together. And sometimes this involves email. I promise I will be talking about email in a minute, but that's it. That's the whole process. It's not terribly complicated, and people think that we're wizards for doing it because they don't really have a broader understanding of how this ends up manifesting, right? I have used a form of this process to generate, at a conservative estimate as of press time, over $10 million in annual recurring revenue for my clients over the past couple of years. And in doing so, I keep kind of accidentally creating culture shifts in the organizations that I work for such that they end up stealing this process and making it part of their own DNA. I know that Draft has done a good job when we part ways because they feel empowered to do the same things themselves. I'm going to whip through how this ends up showing up for us and what it means for kind of email, right? Because I want to go through this talk having you think about how your processes can change as a result of all of the fundamental things that I'm saying. Your store, your business is different from any other one that I've ever worked with. And whatever changes that you make have to reflect the way that you actually make decisions right now. And that feels obvious, but it's worth saying here and kind of setting an intention. That's the first part. Second part is design. Design is the process of making evidence-based decisions by listening to your customers. And in listening, in that process, we understand what customers say and what customers do. Often those are 2 very different things. And this presupposes an important thing, which is that we don't know what our customers know. We don't know what our customers know. That is the fundamental basis of this entire talk. If you disagree with that, you're going to disagree with the entire rest of the talk. I believe that we need to treat our customers, that they will say what they need, and we need to take that seriously. And I advocate very strongly for customer-driven, design-informed businesses, because we need to believe that they know what they want and that they're not misleading us. And then we need to take action on how they are guiding us, right? We often get a lot of common objections to the belief that we don't know what our customers know. So I'm going to run through a few of them here. And the first is, our products are amazing. We know what we're doing. Our customers trust us. Now, obviously, these are all just paraphrases, which is fine. But I get these sorts of things all the time, right? And so to this, I would just say, what got you here won't get you to the next stage of your business. I come bearing some thrilling news. You don't know that any changes you make are going to have a positive impact. You just don't. If your business became successful enough that you're in a period of significant growth, and I assure you, you definitely don't know what you're doing because the business has changed and your customer base has changed. You don't know who your customer is. You don't. As the business changes, you do not know who your customer is. Now, the second is, but I talk to customers all the time. Great. You know, if you're the one person in this entire audience who does, in fact, actually call customers and get them on the phone, great. But if that's not the case, then you talk to your loudest customers all the time. You talk to your most passionate customers all the time. You talk to customers who have problems with their order all the time, right? You never talk to all of your customers. If somebody just gets something out of your product and loves it and goes away, that's fine. Really, in practice, you probably talk to as few customers as you possibly can, and then you draw conclusions from an inaccurate subset of them. Or maybe you just talk to your mom all the time. I don't know. And then the last is longer. I came up with this product after seeing an unmet need in the market. You're a genius. Congratulations. Therefore, I know what's best for the customer. This is kind of what I call the Steve Jobs maxim. Unfortunately, you are not Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was kind of a jerk. And if you're hiring me, then know that I don't know what's best for the customer either, right? Like, I only know what's best for one living being in the world, and that is Basil, the world's greatest organism. Your customers are not Basil. I don't know what's best for any other human in my life, no matter how close they are to me. Only Basil, who hates being picked up more than anything. People know what's best for themselves. Intuition around customer needs got you to this point, and that gave you safety and comfort. And now your business is plateauing, and you're seeking further growth. Or, like everyone now, you exist in a period of global crisis, and you want some clarity on how to move, right? And I can't blame you for any of this, but when you reach this point, your ego becomes your business's biggest enemy. More than Amazon, more than Apple, more than any competitor that you have. You know too much. Really, I don't see an excuse to be talking to your customers. According to one of my absolute favorite consultants in the world, and for a while a friend, he's a great person. His name is Philip Morgan, and he mostly teaches people on how to become better experts in their field. In order to become a better expert in your field, what do you have to do? Well, you have to research. And he advocates a lot for small-scale research, and I've been reading a book that he has in process about how to conduct a small-scale research study and why to do it. And he says that the 5 things holding people back from research are, first off, you don't understand what research really is. Like, I think everybody listening to this talk ever will have a different conception of what research is, which is hilarious to me. Like, maybe the least charitable is you're writing a 5-paragraph essay in high school and you have to go to the encyclopedia back when those existed. We lack formal training in research, or we think that formal training is necessary for research. And I assure you, other than going to college, I have no formal training in research. You don't get a PhD in research. Or we're intimidated by the idea of research. Maybe we have too little time in the day, or we don't know where to start. Next, we don't see very many examples from our peers of really good research. And I think this is endemic in the tech industry. I do a ton of research, right? If you've read any of my books, you know there are a billion side notes and other works cited and stuff like that. And that's how my brain works. But do you know other people who spend a lot of time researching that aren't just doing it for a living? It's not common, unless you're also a researcher and all you do is know other researchers. Again, that is not very common. Developers don't do this. Designers don't do this. Even contemporary UX designers don't really do this. And so if you don't have a community that's researching, you don't actually think to be doing this. And then the last one, I'm actually just going to quote Philip here wholesale, because this paragraph he wrote in this guide that's forthcoming wrecked me. He wrote, quote, "We practice an unlicensed profession, and so there's little incentive for us to raise our game beyond what improvisation, gut feel, past experience, quote, best practices, and a dash of confidence can achieve." Every day I wake up and go to work assuming that I know nothing. And this is a show of strength and humility. I really genuinely believe that. I think that design is the process of understanding a little more at the end of the day, or being less wrong at the end of the day than you were at the beginning. And I want to invite a deeper consideration of research in all of our daily processes. And it's not like there's a shortage of texts on this. There's my first book, obviously, but then there are these 5 that I think are incredibly valuable for people. And all of these are like afternoon reads. About Face is a little bit longer, but that's it. And some of them are stone cold classics in the tech industry. Any talk I've given, anything that's on my blog, like there's tons and tons of resources about how to research effectively. And I invite everybody listening to this, like go out, read these, and gain a greater understanding about how to actually talk to your customers, because ultimately that will be a net ROI positive activity. Like that's it. It will help you short-term in the business, and it'll help you long-term in your career, because it will make you focused on really the success of the business. And who doesn't want to do that, right? Like, we all have a responsibility to go and do that. And I don't understand why, after 20 years of my being in this industry, people are still being weird about this and cutting research from budgets and not valuing it properly. I think it prints money, for one, if you want to be cynical about it. But more importantly, it's fun. I had an amazing research project today before I gave this talk, and I'm just so grateful for it. And I'm grateful for that understanding, because I think it makes me into a more kind and empathetic person when I'm trying to make decisions. In the spirit of that, now we are finally going to be talking about email. And before I go into this, I want to kind of go into a little bit of a historical interlude. For a long time, obviously, I'm known for running A/B tests and doing optimization and stuff like that. Nobody really A/B tested email for a really long time. ESPs didn't support it. There was no real need to persuade people around all of that. So nobody even really optimized email. And then in around 2008 or so, somebody came in and kind of changed our industry. And it's actually a fellow Chicagoan. As far as I know, this is the earliest example of like extensive deep A/B testing as a case study. Like, I know that people were doing this before him, but this is the one that really changed the conversation in the industry. He is a fellow Chicagoan. Although he's a White Sox fan, nobody's perfect. It's completely fine. But yeah, the 2008 Obama campaign had a really sophisticated tech team. They wrote their own email service provider. They A/B tested their own subject lines. And Obama eventually grew a mailing list of tens of millions of Americans, which was more than enough to start A/B testing subject lines for open and click rates. The most successful subject line that Barack Obama sent in his 2008 presidential campaign was actually this. It was just one word. It was, "Hey." Hey. Can you imagine receiving a legitimate email where the subject line was "Hey" and the from said Barack Obama? But how did Obama go about optimizing for "Hey"? It's actually brilliant. I really love this process. So steps 1 and 2 happen at once. You would send 2 variations. So you get a control, which is not "Hey," and the variant, which is "Hey," to 5% of the list apiece. 90% of it's not going to get it quite yet. And they'd wait a few hours, measure the open and click rates, and then whatever the winner was, in this case, "Hey," would go to the remaining 90% of the mailing list. And like, that's a pretty smart idea. Operationally, that is sound. That makes a lot of sense from a statistics standpoint. It reduces risk because only 5% of the whole mailing list is going to get the loser. And a few email service providers took this after Obama won, and they kind of ran with it. Even though political campaigns operate completely differently from online stores, and most of the mailing list software out there is supporting e-commerce, that sort of never stopped anyone. And now we have the ability to optimize email, and I'm supposed to come up here and tell you how to do it. Unfortunately, Barry's process is not going to work for contemporary optimizations of email and e-commerce, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But I will say, yes, you can optimize email under a few circumstances. And the big one is basically transactional email and automated campaigns. They're great for subject lines, layout, body copy, all of it. If you test cart abandonment emails, win-back sequences, post-purchase campaigns, again, these are all places where operationally you can test email. But you should research whether or not you should be doing that in the first place, or you're just testing stuff for the sake of testing stuff. It's sort of like the equivalent of driving your car around the block. You're just burning gasoline, and all you do is see your block, which you already know what that looks like. Maybe you did that when you were staring into the void during a pandemic, but I don't know. I'm not doing that now, so great. If you want to do these sorts of things, Klaviyo has a lovely guide that's linked right here. And so it might not make sense, right? These are just tools. Your car is a tool. You should figure out what to put your resources into before you start optimizing anything. And without research, you don't know what to change anything to yet, whether or not to change something in the first place, right? These are things you can safely change. You probably shouldn't optimize individual campaigns. You should not do what Barry actually did. And the reason why is a super fast math lesson. And I'm not sorry, I was a math major, so you're just going to have to listen to me. Let's have an imaginary store. Your conversion rate from email, because this is an email conference, is 5% over the past 30 days or so. Fine. That's about average from what I see with my clients, like 4, 6 to 5. Fine. Let's also say that email, your email campaigns, have about a click-through rate of 10% as of press time, which is also pretty in line with some of the more successful campaigns that we run. When you're running an A/B test, you need what's called a minimum sample size to make sure you're getting to a statistically significant result. Because let's say you have you send out a control and a variant to a really small email list, and 2 people buy the control and 1 person buys the variant. That's not actually a successful A/B test because effectively it was random. Like if you moved one other to the variant, then the variant has a doubled conversion rate and the control doesn't. And so you need many, many people in order to run an A/B test. You calculate minimum sample size with 3 numbers. The first is called your confidence level, which is basically how sure you are of the test results. The next is what's called the minimum detectable effect, which is what you're hoping to get lift-wise out of the A/B test. And then finally is your existing conversion rate. Conversion rate's easy. I can go to the math behind it, but in practice, I run all of these things through a guy named Evan Miller's sample size calculator. It's linked here. It is a beautiful and inspiring palace of Times New Roman, and then I look at the number that comes out. And so in practice, we do about 95% or up confidence at draft. For minimum detectable effect, let's say 20%. So if you want the conversion rate to go from 5% to 6%, okay, great. Then it's a winner. If it goes down to 4%, then it's a conclusive loser. And then the conversion rate actually is not 5%, even though it says conversion rate, because you're clicking through, right? So you want to multiply that click-through rate by the conversion rate, which means in practice only 0.5% of people that are actually getting this test are going to be doing it. That's your conversion rate is 0.5%. And we run it all through this calculator. As I mentioned, a beautiful Palace of Times New Roman. And you get this number, which is 135,000 people per variation. Great. Lovely. That's fine, but remember that your whole test is only going out to 1/10 of your list. Remember this? Control and variant only get 5%. You have to take this number here and multiply it by 20, and then you get over 2 million people. That is the minimum sample size for a mailing list for a test of this kind. To be 95% sure of a 20% minimum detectable effect for something that only goes out to 5% of your list, you need this many people. Maybe you have a list that big. My clients sometimes have really big lists. I mean, most of them do not have lists that big, but some of them have big lists. So why do we all A/B test our email? I don't know. Thanks, Barry. Hey. So to be fair, you can reduce that number quite a bit. You can be less sure of your findings by decreasing the statistical significance from 95%. You can only count big swing for the fences tests, and you do that by increasing the minimum detectable effect. And you can increase the share of your lists that receives the test, so it's not just 5%. All 3 of those increase the risk palpably of you running this test, and I don't personally feel comfortable with it, because you can't cheat statistics. Like, that's it. Those are it. Like, you're cutting meat and not feeling good about it. This number is why I almost never run A/B tests on email. I'm known for A/B testing. I'm speaking at an email conference. I've run over 500 A/B tests in the past decade. But if you want to change the subject line or the color scheme or anything else on your emails, you should really just inform yourself, do it, and see what happens. That's it. That sounds easy, but the inform yourself of that previous sentence is far harder than it looks within most e-commerce teams because that is the part that involves research. That's scary to people and they don't know where to start. We already trotted out all the objections that people have. So instead of running A/B tests, let's talk about something I've recently done with email that has worked well. Researching is really easy. It involves 3 steps. The first is you recruit customers. Export all paid, unrefunded domestic orders from the past month that agreed to email marketing and email about 600 of them for a 6 to 7 participant round of tests. Explain what we're doing, offer a $50 gift card as compensation, give them a scheduling link. I use Calendly. There's a billion of them now. Use them if they're interested. And then you follow up beforehand, get on a recorded call with somebody, and you ask non-leading questions about how they found you, what they experienced, and what they would do better. That book I cited before, Steve Portigal's Interviewing Users, is terrific for this. And if you want example scripts, they're on our blog. You give people the gift card immediately at the end of the call. That's it. Finally, you transcribe the calls. I use gotranscript.com. You go through everything, write up a summary document of what people said. Try to keep it as impartial and reporterly as possible. You're a journalist in this situation. Focus on what they want and don't jump to solutions. Trust me, solutions will come in due time, and it's more powerful for you to just lay out what people are saying and have the team deal with it. That's the process. Each one of these bullet points could be a 3-hour workshop if we really wanted it to be, right? But I'll go into an example here. One of my clients is a barbecue company, and the owner, back in the day, won a bunch of competitions. He made his own line of products, and then he sold a ton of those products to people who also like winning barbecue competitions. And eventually he ran out of nerds to sell barbecue sauces and rubs to. He plateaued, and then he wondered how he could expand the tent to other home cooks and amateurs. Valid question. And he hired us to figure out what we could do. So I got a handful of first-time customers on the phone. I recruited specifically from regions of the country that don't have huge barbecue traditions. So like I was calling people from Connecticut, not Texas, for example. I asked them what they used our products on, how they worked with them, what they did, what worked, what didn't work. And what I ended up finding actually was that people were getting pretty lousy results from our barbecue products. And so they were not coming back and buying from us again. They weren't using enough of our product. They weren't using the right recipes. They weren't going to the right community about it. And we had assumed that people would know what they were doing on a very basic level, but they didn't. That's our fault for not engaging and educating the customer, like really. And so then we wondered what to be doing about it. We could have written some blog posts, thrown an explainer card in orders, posted recipes to the store, updated product detail pages with more information. Ultimately, I think the answer is email. We ended up using an email course to replace our existing post-purchase marketing sequence because, for one, it hits at the peak interest in our product, it educates people who don't know anything about barbecue, and it sets them up to succeed. Like, people want to succeed. This plays to their impulses, right? Like, why else are they here? They're not here to buy crappy barbecue from us. They're here to impress their friends and families. So we sent an email sequence that went out first-time customers once a day for 5 days, and it ends with recipes that use our other products. So again, if I hadn't run these interviews, I wouldn't have known what to write about or even to make changes to the existing, what looked like was perfectly working post-purchase campaign in the first place. And the lessons in this course are mind-blindingly obvious to anyone involved in serious barbecue, but they came as a real big surprise to outsiders. And that is precisely the point. We wanted to move the customer from amateur to expert as quickly as humanly possible and really empower them with the basic skills to succeed with the tools that they have on hand. And the results are pretty clear, even from a quantitative standpoint. 2.5 times open rate, twice click rate, 1.8x conversion rate. People were buying more stuff from us than ever before with their first order. And then we took those orders, the ones that people were making a few days later, so people would come back and buy more stuff based on those recipes. We looked at what those were, and then we used them to fine-tune our upsells on the store itself. So then over time, that actually increased AOV over 15% to all-time highs on the store, which is amazing. These numbers are amazing. And I'm really, really grateful for it. Is the takeaway to create a post-purchase sequence? No, it's super extremely is not to do that. It's not. Remember what my friend Philip said earlier. There's little incentive for us to raise our game beyond what improvisation, gut feel, past experience, best practices, like a post-purchase sequence, and a dash of confidence can achieve. It's a good tactic, but it's impossible to guess whether any tactic is going to succeed in an unresearched vacuum. The actual takeaway is this. If you are wondering how to break into new markets and how to improve your conversion rate, get customers from that market on the phone, listen to what they are saying, come up with a solution that meets their needs, and maybe it involves email IDK. This is the work. Behind everything that Draft does is months of hard, bespoke, slow, deep work. If you want to embrace outsized growth, don't steal the outward manifestations of what we do. That is amateur hour. You did not come to this conference to learn amateur hour. You just didn't. Finally, I'm going to talk about how to run your life. This is my first public talk in 2.5 years, because duh. And while putting it together, I got to thinking, like, what have I learned over the past 2 years? Like, clearly I've been working and doing stuff, and I've gone through love and loss and transformation like anyone. So what do I want to drive home for you? What's the right mindset for thinking about all of this? And I kind of realized there's something broader here that I want to be talking about, and I've been circling it, and I want to stab it dead, and then we're done. And my friend Kurt wrote this the other day. He's another consultant and a dear friend that I've known for decades. He wrote, "I love the warranty note displayed on this flat pack furniture packaging. It stands out, busts objections, preempts customer service issues, and feels personal and human. People buy from people, not brands." That last sentence, man, on the other side of every single session, all of them is a real person. That's it. And I know that's obvious to us, but we forget it, don't we? And I mean, we have a lot of reasons to forget it. Most of us don't run brick and mortar stores in addition to our online operations, so we don't see these people. We wall ourselves off from customer support. And we're nerds, so if we're going to do any research, it's going to be quantitative in nature. We're going to be looking at GA, Shopify analytics, open rates, and that makes e-commerce into this baffling sort of video game all of the time. That is not good business. But also, don't take that from me, the consultant who has battle scars and is being taken seriously enough to speak at this conference. Take it from someone who is way smarter than me. If you don't know who this person is, you absolutely should. Her name is Kathy Sierra. She is one of the finest authors in early computing. If you learned to program in like the 80s or 90s, you largely have this person to thank. She disappeared from the tech industry for a minute and then came back in 2015 with this book called Badass, which you can read in an hour. It's linked there. That's an affiliate link. I regret nothing. It's one of the most influential business books in my life. And at one point in the book, she asks this. First, a pop quiz. Which would you rather have a user feel? Which of these would be a better predictor of sustained success? And which of these feelings inspires more honest word of mouth? You're forced to pick just one. There's a guy at a table, restaurant looks like, and he says either A, this product is awesome, B, this company is awesome, and C, this brand is awesome. When I presented this at UNSPAM, most people picked C. It's actually D. It's a trick question. It's actually I'm awesome. I'm awesome. People want empowerment, and they are buying an outcome. What are we doing as businesses to catalyze this sort of reaction in people? How are we helping people live better lives? When I'm selling barbecue stuff to people, they're not buying a rub, they're buying better brisket. And then what does the better brisket do? Well, it nourishes them, duh, but it also helps feed their family and their community. Then they end up impressing all their friends. One thing that I've learned in all of my customer interviews with this particular client is how emotionally driven people are to impress their friends with good barbecue. Their church group, they started a catering company, they might have a big family, and they're just known in their communities as the person who does this amazing. And no one knows how, and they know how. They're awesome. I know this talk has been a bit on the squishy side. It's definitely a little bit more qualitative than I normally do when I'm up here. But I can't make any recommendations around what to do if you don't have an accepting and open mindset around what motivates customers. And if you aren't willing to listen to them, I don't have anything I can tell you. I genuinely don't. I don't know why I'm on this stage, and I don't know why I'm giving this talk to you. So I know it seems on the face very weird to be concerned about this, because ultimately I also have to show up at my job every day and look at the hard numbers. But I also know two things. Every time I make a change, there's an impact in the lives of other people. And Whenever I focus on the lives of other people, it always seems like the numbers take care of themselves. Funny about that, right? And the same with you. If we're just blindly posting about new products and sales and sending people new emails without really thinking about how the outcomes are, we're not really helping customers. We're just helping ourselves. And that's selfish. Customers can tell when something selfish ends up in their inbox. They're not stupid. They're smart. The truly wild thing is the more we help customers, the more likely we are to help our own businesses in the process. I came into this talk because I want to see an end to short-termism and blind leader following in e-commerce. Full stop, point blank. They're corrosive and toxic, and we can do better as an industry. And so these are some of the principles that guide us at Draft, and they can guide you too. I didn't just come up with this out of magic, and I'm not the only one who can practice it. In many ways, I feel very lonely in this industry because I feel like I'm the only one doing this. And I don't want to be the only one doing this. I want to learn from others. And I know that the reason is because people are afraid and they don't know how to actually practice this. But I believe businesses can stick around for the long haul. They can exist to make the world a little better, but only if they want to. That's why I get up to work in the morning, and you can do this too. Thank you all so much for listening, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.